Daichai, a 38-year-old office worker, ended up choosing the worst F-rank skills, but somehow became the most overpowered player in the entire game. In his everyday life, he worked hard just to make a living, yet instead of chasing a better career, he chose to dive into a brand new virtual reality game. He saw himself as a washed-up old man, but inside the game, everything changed. He felt young again, capable of incredible feats that real life had never allowed him to experience. He chose to name his character Earth and designed him to look completely plain and ordinary. Standing out wasn't his goal. He wasn't the kind of person who wanted to be the center of attention. Since he had work and responsibilities, playing the game all day wasn't an option. That meant he could only log in for about 2 or 3 hours each day. Worried that he might inconvenience other players if he teamed up with them. For that reason, he mostly stuck to playing alone. When selecting special abilities for his character, he intentionally went with weaker skills, ones that had performed poorly during the game's testing phase. His reasoning was simple. By picking these underpowered options, the hardcore gamers wouldn't bother paying him any attention. That way, he could enjoy the game at his own relaxed pace, without any pressure. For instance, he selected one called Medicine, which ended up being nearly worthless since healing potions were cheap and readily available from NPCs. Then there was Kick, a basic ability without any flashy combos or finishing moves, making it impossible to take down enemies in a single strike. And let's not forget the bow skill he picked, which was so inaccurate it barely ever hit its mark. He gave the sneak skill a try too, but it drained his character's magic points way too fast. On top of that, the moment he moved, enemies could detect him almost instantly. Definitely not ideal for escaping dangerous creatures. And finally, there was the enhanced physical abilities skill. It promised minor boosts to running speed, weapon handling, and crafting, except the actual improvement was so tiny it barely made a difference. If a player wants to become powerful, they should obviously select more unique and specialized skills. With his questionable choices, Earth might have accidentally created the weakest character in gaming history. But that's exactly how he preferred it. By stacking his build with underwhelming abilities, other gamers left him alone, letting him enjoy the game at his own pace, exactly as he liked. He eventually logged into a game called One More Free Life Online. The name came from the idea that players could live a whole new life without the pressure of defeating a final boss. They were free to battle monsters, craft awesome gear, or simply relax and chat with others. It was the perfect game for those who felt unsatisfied with their real-world lives. On launch day, the game was packed with players everywhere. A girl randomly approached Earth and tried to sell him some gear. But right at that moment, a group of heroes came back from battle, and Earth noticed that not one of them was an archer. Out of nowhere, a guy dressed in a shiny knight armor began mocking him. Earth couldn't help but feel that this was a pretty awful way to kick off his first day in the game. The guy called bows worthless and mocked Earth for being strange. He went as far as humiliating Earth by making him lick the floor. Earth felt completely miserable, and only then did the jerk finally walk away. Seems like archers don't get much love from other players, but honestly, Earth couldn't care less. Later, at the training hall, Earth gets pumped up watching other players practice and decides to give it a shot himself. Unfortunately, the only thing he manages to hit is the ground. It doesn't take long for him to realize that his archery skills are terrible. Still, he refuses to give up and keeps practicing, even if it seems pointless. He ends up missing the target completely and hitting everything else instead, realizing he's even worse than he imagined. After firing off 100 arrows, he finally reaches level 5 and celebrates the small victory. Curious, he tests out his kicking skills and notices they've gotten stronger. He also tries using his wind spell, and to his surprise, it's far more accurate than his archery. Equipped with just the bare minimum skills to survive, Earth ventures out into the field, only to find complete chaos thanks to the flood of new players. Now, his plan is to gather herbs. But there's a problem. Nobody can identify what they've picked up. He attempts to appraise the herbs, but fails repeatedly, one try after another. Eventually, he manages to level up his medical skills. That's when he discovers that one of the herbs he gathered is extremely dangerous. It can actually stop a person's breathing and kill them if ingested. Earth gets pretty upset that the developers would include such a lethal plant in a beginner zone, but at least he's thankful he learned how to appraise items in time. Next, he purchases a beginner's medicine crafting kit and gives potion making a try. Surprisingly, he succeeds in creating a standard healing potion, and then follows it up with a healing antidote. He soon realizes that once he crafts something once, the game allows him to produce more of the same item with ease. Earth recalls that potions can be bought cheaply from NPCs, so he worries that no one will be interested in his handmade ones. Still, his medicine skill hits level 7, and with that boost, Earth decides it's time to head out and do some hunting. Fortunately, the area wasn't crowded, so Earth got first dibs on a rabbit horn. Knowing that bows had a slow firing rate, he understood that landing the first shot was crucial. But he missed, and the rabbit horn became enraged. Acting fast, Earth fired an arrow that struck the creature's paw, then followed up with a knee to its stomach. To wrap things up, he gave the rabbit horn a kick, sending it flying through the air. Earth came to the realization that he was better at kicking than shooting arrows. Right at that moment, two people appeared to greet him. One was a guy named Sway, who couldn't contain his laughter after the rabbit horn let out such a strange sound. He said something about humor being justice, which left Earth wondering if he was some kind of comedian. The girl's name was Millie, and they asked if they could send Earth friend requests. Sway got all excited when Earth said yes, talking about how they could become a top comedy duo. They walked off, and Earth returned to gaining more experience. However, he quickly noticed that the rabbit horns were surprisingly clever. No matter how quietly he tried to approach them, they always spotted him. His wind spell managed to take down one of the smaller rabbit horns, but he was eager to test out his sneak spell to ambush another one. It actually worked. Earth realized that while his bow usually missed the mark, combining it with his sneak spell made him surprisingly powerful. After a while, he decided to log off. He knew the hardcore players would be grinding all night, but he had work the tomorrow. The next morning, Earth had some awful tasting bread for breakfast and made up his mind to cook his own meals. He seasoned a steak to try and make it delicious, but quickly realized he didn't really know what he was doing. His first attempt turned out terribly, scoring only a 2. Not giving up, he tweaked the recipe, and the second try came out great. Still, he wasn't satisfied. He wanted to make it even better. Tapping into his inner chef, Earth's mouth-watering cooking smells started drawing in players from all around. When he finally completed the dish, it scored a 7, but before he could enjoy it, a crowd formed, all begging for a taste. Not wanting to hand it out for free, he set a steep price and was shocked when people actually was willing to pay for it. He ended up spending the entire evening cooking, which boosted his cooking level to 20 and even unlocked a skill that let him cook faster. Later on, Earth decided to try crafting a bow. Since bows weren't in high demand, most archers usually had to make their own. His first attempt was pretty simple, just a basic design, earning a low score of 3 and an attack power of just 4. But his second bow turned out way better. He used 3 wooden pieces this time, carefully sanding them down so they fit together just right. The result was a huge upgrade, boasting an attack power of 12. Earth finally gave his super plain appearance an upgrade with some stylish armor. After checking his stats, he was pleasantly surprised by the significant improvements he'd made. However, he noticed his funds were running low. To test the market, he placed some food and a grape-flavored healing potion into a vending machine, hoping someone might purchase them. Later, we witnessed Earth achieving massive progress. Taking down some seriously powerful beasts became much easier thanks to his handmade bow and enhanced skills. When he returned to the vending machine, he discovered a bunch of notes from people who appreciated his products. Things were going even better than he had hoped. But suddenly, everything changed. A new system attacked on everyone, forcing them to rush back to town. Chaos broke out as players searched for someone with healing skills, desperately pleading for potions. Earth was puzzled at first, thinking they could simply get potions from the game's NPCs. But Zwei told him the NPCs were claiming they were out of stock. That spelled trouble for Earth, since he realized everyone would now flock to his vending machine for the potions he had stocked. Before he could even catch his breath, players were already pleading for potions. So, Earth quickly decided to limit how many each person could buy and raised the price significantly. To his surprise, everyone accepted the high price without protest. The kind notes on the vending machine were soon replaced with impatient messages urging Earth to hurry. Thankfully, his friends came to lend a hand. Sway managed the crowd while Millie offered to handle the payments. But after a while, Earth ran out of herbs and couldn't produce any more potions, so the crowd agreed to return the following day. Then, the flashy knight from earlier showed up and insisted that Earth hand over every last potion. When Earth refused, the knight threatened him. But this time, Earth didn't back down and told the knight that the townspeople were the ones who truly needed the potions. He insisted the knight wait his turn like everyone else, but instead, the knight tried to buy him off. Earth warned him not to go down that path, saying the game's NPCs might stop selling weapons and armor, forcing them to depend on crafters. The knight would need to learn how to work with other players, but he didn't care, so he challenged Earth to a duel. Sway urged Earth not to accept, but Earth refused to let anyone push others around. So, Earth accepted the challenge and planned to use the knight's arrogance against him to spot a weakness. The flashy knight launched a strong opening attack, but Earth dodged it effortlessly. He quickly identified a vulnerable spot and shot an arrow straight through his neck. The knight was stunned, and Earth was officially declared the winner. Earth is glad he won and assured everyone he'd restock potions by the next day. Then he logged off, feeling the day had gone well and thinking those thugs might end up quitting the game. Several days had gone by since the incident involving the missing potions, and the game underwent a significant shift. Earth noticed that understanding how to use medicine had become crucial. It dawned on everyone that even the NPCs might deplete their supplies, which led them to consider studying medicine. Earth rejoined the game and expressed his thanks to Zwei for the guild invitation. Zwei then introduced the rest of the team, beginning with an imposing guy named Rage, who wielded a one-handed axe and a shield, promising to draw enemy attention to himself. Next was Nora, a girl who said she specialized in close combat with short swords. Finally, there was Kazamine, who was incredibly skilled with a sword. Earth tried to introduce himself, but the others cut him off, all excitedly talking about how strong he was after his duel with the shiny knight. He didn't want the attention, especially since he had only just taught a thug a lesson. While observing the team, Earth realized their lineup was a bit unbalanced: 4 melee fighters, 1 mage, and an archer. However, Zwei clarified that Millie could use various types of magic, and Nora was capable of healing magic as well. Zwei announced that their first mission was to defeat a wild bear. The rest of the team was pumped and full of confidence, though Earth couldn't understand why they were so sure of themselves. Zwei told Earth that they were all counting on him to carry the team. Earth admitted he had never encountered a wild bear before, but had heard they were incredibly fast, intelligent, and hard to take down. Still, Zwei brushed off his concerns and promised that Earth will cook something tasty for the group once the mission was over. While the others eagerly set out, Earth wasn't quite as enthusiastic. They soon spotted a group of wild bears, so the team chose one they could all target together. The others began to see how useful Earth's long-range vision skill was, realizing he brought real value to the group. Millie cast a buff on Zwei, and they came up with a plan to lure a bear away from the group. Using his sneak skill, Earth shot an arrow into the back of the bear's neck, but he hadn't considered what to do once it got angry. Fortunately, Rage, acting as the tank, quickly stepped in to draw the bear's attention. Earth explains that monsters have a thing called aggro, which basically shows who they're focused on attacking. Since Rage has high defense, his job is to keep the bear angry at him and shield the others. Earth hides in the bushes to attack from afar, while Millie focuses on healing Rage, and Nora jumps in to deal some damage. The team launches their assault, but they soon realize the bear's skin is extremely tough. Millie then casts a fire spell to distract the bear, and it works, drawing its attention back to Rage. The battle starts getting intense, and Zwei begins to realize they may have underestimated the bear. Seeing things take a bad turn, Earth knows he has to act fast. Relying on his 38 years of life experience, he takes a bold risk and aims an arrow between the bear's eyes, assuming it's a weak spot. At first, it looks like it worked, but it turns out it didn't, and now everyone's questioning if they're in serious trouble. The bear still has way too much HP left. With no other options left, Earth makes his move. The team is concerned for his safety, but he charges in anyway, using a spell he picked up at Wind Magic level 15. It boosts his speed for 10 seconds, giving him the chance to drive his arrow deeper into the bear's skull. Millie follows up with a powerful fire spell, and together they finally bring the beast down. Afterward, they all realize the fight was far tougher than they had expected. After the battle, Earth cooks a meal for the team, and everyone is blown away by how delicious it is. They ask if making food that good costs a lot, but Earth tells them it doesn't. The real issue is that the recipes aren't available for purchase, since crafters follow an unspoken rule not to share or trade them. One reason trading recipes isn't practical is that creating them requires a significant amount of time and money. Another factor is that even when 2 people follow the same recipe, the results can end up being completely different. Recipes represent the effort and creativity poured into them by their creators. While you might replicate the instructions, duplicating the same level of quality is impossible. Sway thinks Earth should always cook for them for cheap, and everyone agrees, even though Earth doesn't really want to. But they don't listen to him. They all ask to be friends, and Earth's first adventure with a party goes well. Some time later, Earth went out to hunt monsters, but things quickly went wrong. After taking down a monster by himself, he got overconfident and ventured into the forest alone. He attacked an ant, but his arrow didn't hurt it at all. Then the ant called for backup. Earth tried to kick it in the head, only to find out it could reflect damage. Paralyzed by the ant's counterattack, Earth found himself in serious trouble as the swarm closed in, ready to make him pay for his mistake. After dying, Earth received a penalty and was sent back to town. He admitted it was his own fault for being overconfident, and resolved to improve next time. Shortly after, all players got a notification about a major update called the Fairy Ball. It would introduce new skills and items for crafters, along with fairies to support them on their journeys. Realizing that other players would also be leveling up, Earth knew he couldn't afford to fall behind by getting more death penalties. Later on, we see Earth putting in a lot of effort to recover from his heavy penalty and learning how to become a blacksmith. Determined not to repeat his past mistakes, he decides to craft an arrowhead capable of piercing the ant's tough exoskeleton. He gathers two kinds of iron, regular iron for piercing and ultra-pure iron for impact damage. He then attaches a metal tip to a wooden shaft, creating an iron arrow with 7 attack points. After that, he forges a mace-style arrowhead designed specifically for smashing. Earth is sure he'll meet more enemies that can reflect damage, and kicking doesn't let him use a weapon. So, he adds short spikes to the bottom of his boots and a blade on the side to solve both problems. Even though it's a prototype, it's useful, giving him 12 attack points and 2 extra defense. But he wants to test it and make it better. A couple of rude guys walk up and start mocking his boots, joking about whether they're footwear or weapons. Earth confidently replies that they're both, leaving the guys embarrassed since all they can do is act tough. Afterward, Earth stops by a shop to pick up some bowstrings. The girl working there notices his unusual boots and gets a little nervous when he mentions he'll be using them to battle ants. She's surprised. She had no idea he was more than just a chef. Regarding his bow, Earth shares that he's reached archery level 30 and now has to choose a specialization. He's given 3 options: short bow, long bow, and hunting bow. Short bows are easy to handle but have limited range, which doesn't suit him since he's not a close combat fighter. Long bows offer great range and power but take too long to shoot, making them impractical for solo play. In the end, he chooses the hunting bow, which matches the range and power of his old one but comes with stronger skills. Earth begins crafting a new bow and picks a design that appeals to him. When the blacksmith, Blacks, notices what he's working on, he's taken aback. He's never seen a bow like that before. Earth completes the unique weapon, naming it the X-bow, and it boasts 32 attack points. Unlike his previous bow, it requires more strength to draw, but it feels incredible and packs a much stronger punch. Feeling a bit nostalgic, Earth thanks his old bow for serving him well, then quickly shifts gears, eager to test out his new creation. The following day, he returns to the forest, set on getting revenge. He spots a lone ant and hits it with his smashing arrow. The ant attempts to reflect the damage, but Earth takes it down with his pointy arrow. Still, that's not enough to satisfy him. Wanting to feel better, he goes on a rampage, taking down as many ants as he can. Eventually, he stands proudly before the pile of defeated ants, declaring his victory. Yet, it feels like his thirst for revenge isn't quite over. Earth hauls the ant carcasses back into town, planning to craft fresh armor from them. As he works, word spreads about the fairy ball's beginning, and he spots a glowing crystal. Being an archer, he dreams of forming a pact with a wind fairy. With hope in his heart, he begins the ritual. The crystal trembles, only to shatter moments later. His heart breaks right along with it. Later on, Earth chats with Sway and shares how his fairy ritual didn't work out. While everyone else had success, they cheer him on and tell him not to lose hope. They mention there's still a chance during the second half of the event, and since the broken item didn't vanish, he can try again. Sway feels relieved that at least one issue is resolved but can't help but wonder why all the fairies seem to be so strangely drawn to Earth. Later on, Earth is just chilling in the shade when a tiny glowing particle floats toward him. He stands up and notes how fairies have been unusually kind to him lately. Gently, he lets the fairy perch on his finger and apologizes for not being able to make a contract because his crystal is still broken. The little fairy begins to play with the damaged crystal, prompting Earth to open his stat window and take a look. He notices his skill levels have increased, giving him the option to use 3 XP points to specialize in a new ability. Without hesitation, he accepts the trade, thinking that mastering a new skill could open up a fresh combat style for him. Eager to test it out, he decides to put the new skill to use in his very first dungeon. He ventures into the dark cave, reminiscing about how he used to do the same thing as a kid. Thanks to his current skills, he's able to steer clear of dangerous, trap-filled spots. As he keeps moving, he reflects on the past, feeling a rush of excitement from exploring in complete darkness. He once thought he'd never get to feel that thrill again, but this game brings it all back. He soon spots a few red lights glowing in the darkness. It's a spider, and it launches an attack. Earth reacts fast, firing an arrow and following up with a wind cutter strike. But to his surprise, the spider isn't down yet. It strikes again, forcing Earth to use one of his new skills, high jump. Though he ends up headbutting the ceiling midair, he manages to land behind the spider. Acting quickly, he uses a whip to drag the creature toward him, then finishes it off with a powerful kick from his new boots. After the spider's body vanishes, a strange purple glow appears. He realizes it's a group of darkness fairies and chooses to follow them. They lead him down a risky path, but thanks to his stable center of gravity skill, he manages to keep his footing and stay safe. When he finally reaches the end of the trail, he's caught off guard by what he sees. A large gathering of fairies surrounding a massive boulder. Curious, he steps closer to investigate. He moves the boulder aside and discovers a hidden door behind it. When he opens it, he spots a box containing an ancient ring. As a memento of his adventures, he chooses to hold onto it and expresses his gratitude to the fairies. Right at that moment, the game masters issue a fresh announcement. They reveal the second phase of the Fairy Ball event, called the Fairy Battle Tournament. Without delay, he rushes back to the main city to catch the official broadcast. The game masters announce that players' fairies can evolve by taking part in the event. To trigger the evolution, they must win a set number of player versus player battles. However, there's a catch. They can't fight the same opponents more than once. Additionally, the top 16 players will earn a spot in an exclusive tournament featuring incredible new rewards. With this update, players can also unlock special titles to show off their achievements. However, some rare titles will be awarded based on each player's unique playstyle. Then comes the announcement that matters most to Earth. Players who failed to form a contract with a fairy will now have the chance to repair their broken crystals by participating in PvP battles. Not only will these repaired crystals guarantee success in forming a new contract, but there's also a high chance of obtaining an S-rank fairy. On top of that, the game will introduce a new system where fairies will have their own identities and personalities. The news excites everyone, especially Earth. Still, Earth worries that some players might go after craftsmen who aren't skilled in battle. He brings up his concerns with his craftsman friend, but they reassure him they'll be safe. They've already agreed to blacklist anyone who tries to pressure them into fighting, meaning anyone who targets them will be permanently cut off from buying their goods. Earth feels relieved knowing they've already figured out a way to defend themselves. Blacks then inquires whether Earth has visited the new town yet. He goes on to explain that Earth can use the warp portal to reach it, but cautions him that a large crowd of intense PvP players has assembled there. Blacks also mentions that some players are deliberately delaying their fights, choosing to duel in first instead. Earth considers this pretty standard for a game and asks if Blacks plans to challenge anyone in first. But Blacks is solely focused on crafting new gear. Earth acknowledges that's a valid way to engage with the event, though he remains uncertain about his own next move. A few days later, the latest game patch goes live, and Earth logs in. Curious, he decides to explore the new title system first. But soon, he notices everyone around him staring and whispering about his rare title. When he checks his stat window, he discovers that his title is Fairy Playboy. To make matters worse, the title is publicly visible to all players. He can't hide it unless he participates in a special PvP battle during the event. Earth is in disbelief that this is really happening. Everyone, including Earth himself, is surprised. He finds the title embarrassing. A group of fairies begins to flock to him, wanting to get rid of it. He decides to enter a battle. Desperate, he calls out for someone to fight him. Just then, a girl named Rona steps in and challenges him. He bursts into tears and gratefully thanks her. She seems to recognize him, though he has no idea who she is. She tells him that she's part of the Blue Color Guild, led by Zwei, and mentions that she specializes in martial arts. She adds that she's interested in seeing Earth's kicking techniques. Just as he's about to accept her duel request, Rona's fairy suddenly flies over and lands on his shoulder. Earth is puzzled, especially since the fairy looks like it's been enchanted. Rona is just as surprised, saying her fairy is normally very shy. Suddenly, the fairy taps the reject duel button, leaving Earth confused. He assumes Rona changed her mind about fighting. Rona quickly explains that she has no idea what her fairy is doing. The fairy then flies back to Earth and begins snuggling against him. The surrounding crowd is just confused, but they start to realize maybe his title isn't wrong after all. Earth really is a fairy playboy. No matter how many players he challenges to a duel, the outcome is always the same. The fairies refuse to let it happen. Rona admits she's never seen anything like it before, while Earth starts ranting and cursing the game masters. He goes back to his typical in-game routine, which mostly involves doing nothing productive, until Rona reaches out to him. She's looking for advice because her fairy keeps rejecting almost all the food she offers. Earth figures she's hoping he can cook something the fairy will actually eat. She's surprised and asks how he figured it out. As it turns out, Earth's food stand now has a massive line, since everyone on the game is dealing with the same issue. Curious, Rona asks how that even happened. A few hours earlier, someone had tried to feed their fairy some bread, but it refused to eat it. The player then asked Earth to cook something, thanks to his cooking skill. The fairy loved it, and word quickly spread. Now, players are flocking to him, requesting large quantities of food for their fairies. Ironically, Earth has always tried his best to avoid drawing attention, yet somehow, he ends up in the spotlight every time. In the end, Rona appeared to help in the food stall, and they quickly dealt with the customers. They thank each other for the help, and Earth explains he will be closing the shop because people are now starting to make fairy food. Rona asks what he will be doing from now on, and he realizes that he's been so occupied that he hasn't checked the new patch features. She then invites him to check the new town together, and they warp there. Earth is quite impressed by Nexia, the new town, and they make the decision to explore the PvP zone. The competitors facing off are a guy accompanied by a blue parrot and another guy with a wolf. Rona picks up on something unusual about the wolf almost immediately and points it out to Earth. He confirms she's correct, but they choose to keep watching the fight. The parrot guy begins by casting fairy wind magic, and soon, both players are clashing fiercely with their swords. The duel is intense, yet both fighters appear skilled as they expertly block each other's strikes. The wolf guy gains the upper hand, forcing his opponent back, and commands his wolf to unleash a fire attack. But the wolf doesn't obey. The guy urges it to hurry, yet every order is ignored. Rona and Earth are surprised. Fairies aren't supposed to disobey commands like this. The parrot strikes with lightning magic, and its owner swiftly finishes off his opponent with a decisive sword strike. The duel ends and Rona asks if Earth knows why the wolf fairy ignored its master's commands. He states the other dude is a slave fairy user. Rona is confused by that term, but Earth explains that's the term they use for people who abuse their fairies. Basically, the guy decided to force the wolf to do what he wanted by hitting it. Therefore, the wolf now refuses to listen to him. The guy suddenly stands up, visibly irritated, and gets ready to strike the fairy wolf out of frustration for not obeying him. Earth instantly senses that something's about to go wrong. Rona asks what's happening, and he explains that he once watched an online video about a player who treated their fairy like a slave. The abuse was so severe that the system intervened and punished the player by forcing him into a battle against his own fairy. Not only did the fairy accept the challenge, it evolved into an S rank mid-fight. In the end, the player lost and had his contract crystal taken away. Fortunately, this time the guy seemed to realize what could happen and chose to back off. Rona admits she didn't know about this kind of system, but Earth explains that some older games use similar mechanics. He tells her that in those games, pets could rebel or even attack their owners if given too many unreasonable commands. She finds that kind of system outdated, but Earth points out that modern games tend to go easy on players. He suspects the game masters are aiming to shape this game more like an old-school MMO. He bids farewell, mentioning that he's about to log out. Back in reality, Earth takes off his VR headset, reflecting on how some players, like Rona, deeply care about their fairies, while others don't. However, he acknowledges that each player has the freedom to play as they choose. Later, he logs back into the game and concentrates on crafting. Soon, the slave fairy user approaches him, explaining that he wanted to speak with Earth because of his unique title. Earth is irritated but decides to listen. The player admits he wants to reconcile with his fairy. Unsurprisingly, the wolf treats Earth with kindness. The player confesses he's aware of the consequences if he continues mistreating his fairy and pleads for Earth's advice. Earth questions why the guy was cruel to the wolf in the first place. The explanation is simple. The player was misled by the game's mechanics and online trends. He He'd seen videos of others abusing their fairies or treating them like performing animals, so he copied their behavior. But with the new patch, fairies were given personalities, and everything changed. The wolf stopped listening to him, and he had even resorted to hitting it to force obedience. Now regretful, the guy turns to Earth for help again, even offering to pay him. Earth declines the payment but firmly tells him to stop treating the wolf the way he used to. Instead, he offers some advice, like starting by treating the wolf as a friend. The guy seems unsure, but Earth dives into detailed advice. He suggests battling together, sharing meals, and taking breaks side by side. He even suggests saying goodbye to the wolf every time he logs out. Over time, this will help the wolf see him as a friend and become more willing to follow his commands. The guy then asks Earth to cook something tasty for the wolf. Earth quickly prepares a meal, and the guy offers it to his companion. Though hesitant at first, the wolf eventually accepts the food. The guy begins to tear up as he notices his fairy gradually warming up to him. He thanks Earth before leaving with his companion, but their exchange hasn't gone unnoticed. Someone lurking nearby seems intrigued by the scene. Earth questions the stranger's identity, and the man introduces himself as Silver, requesting a private conversation with him. Earth agrees to speak with the old man, uncertain whether he's a player or an NPC. Inside the house, Earth observes that the old man's gear, movements, and level appear superior to his own. Silver takes a seat and inquires if Earth has ever encountered someone named Glad. After a brief pause, Earth replies that he hasn't. He mentions rumors that Glad has been going after players with the Fairy Playboy title. Earth, puzzled, asks who Glad is. Silver reveals that Glad used to be part of his team. He was an skilled tank, though he had issues with his behavior. Earth gets the impression that Glad was kicked out of the party. Silver agrees, adding that Glad grew arrogant and started belittling the rest of the team. Silver then shares that Glad was enraged after the recent incident, as he was the only one in the party who failed to form a contract with a fairy. Eventually, his frustration led him to lash out at everyone, which resulted in his expulsion from the group. Silver then calls out his fairy, revealing to Earth that she's an rank light Valkyrie. It was because of her that Glad constantly dismissed the old man's efforts to assist him. However, after the most recent update, Glad managed to obtain a new contract crystal and formed a pact with the Darkness Fox Fairy. Since that moment, he's been going around issuing special PvP duel challenges to others. Earth wonders if Glad is targeting players because he's still bitter about failing to secure a contracted fairy in the first event. Silver warns that Glad plans to use the final day of the event to prove his power, and advises Earth to stay alert. Earth assures him he'll be cautious, and with that, Silver leaves. Still, Earth knows it's risky to blindly trust a one-sided story. Even so, he heeds Silver's warning and decides to limit his time in the city. The following day, he focuses on battling monsters to level up and gather materials, though his real motive is to avoid player challenges, since combat locks him in a safe state from duels. He continues hunting bears to gather meat and fur, intending to use the fur to craft cloaks since the standard body armor leaves the back exposed. From a distance, he lands a headshot on one of the bears, but the battle isn't over yet. The wounded bear becomes enraged and charges straight at Earth. Earth activates his mirror arrow skill, producing 2 clones that each fire an arrow. The bear is struck, and Earth quickly uses his whip to pin it to the ground. He then leaps into the air and lands a powerful kick on the bear. The fight ends in his favor, and his kick skill levels up to 50. Earth upgrades his kick into sliding charge, a move that lets him both ram into enemies and swiftly retreat. Pleased with the new skill, he also observes that the game's interface has been updated, making it easier to track his progress. With that settled, he sets off for the mines to gather steel and light metal, planning to craft new gear. While Earth is mining, he hits an explosive ore. He quickly warns nearby players to back off. It could blow at any second, but luckily, nothing happens. The others chuckle, explaining that while explosive ores are basically live grenades, most players avoid them because of their unpredictability. Still, a daring few specialize in wielding them, earning the title Bomb Masters. After gathering his materials, Earth heads over to visit Blacks, but something catches his eye on the map. His danger perception skill has been flagging something unusual lately. Once inside the blacksmith shop, Blacks immediately asks if Earth's planning to craft another bizarre item. Though it sounds like a joke, he's not far off. Earth plans to craft a new arrowhead along with a metal whip. The arrowhead design is inspired by a twisted dagger, making it more effective for tearing out meat. He begins by shaping an ore ingot into an arrow, then attempts to twist it. After several failed tries, he finally succeeds, but quickly notices that it's much more difficult to work with than a standard arrowhead, although the process is challenging. This twisted arrow boasts plus 15 attack power along with multiple passive abilities. Upon impact, it inflicts a wound and triggers a fissure effect, causing the enemy to lose health continuously. Meanwhile, Earth begins crafting his whip. Typically, whips aren't made from metal, but he's aware of a method to forge one using lightweight metal. This is a unique and unusual metal, not just lightweight but also surprisingly durable. All Earth has to do is repeatedly heat and stretch the light metal ingot until it matches the exact dimensions of his existing whip. Additionally, he plans to mass-produce sharp, triangular fish-like scales and fix them onto the whip. Once he finishes the arrowhead, the system notifies him that it will inflict wounds on any enemy it strikes. He then heads to a different location where he can safely handle the explosive ore. Aware of the high risk involved in using it, he decides to rely on his medicinal skills to create a safer version for use. He begins mixing oil and herbs with the piece of ore to control its ignition speed. After some effort, he manages to create 3 different oil samples. To test them, he first throws Bottle A to the ground, nothing happens. Next, he throws Bottle B, which triggers a massive explosion that nearly wipes him out, reducing his health by 80%. He realizes that the second oil is far too powerful and should only be used as a last-ditch effort to take down the enemy along with himself. Because of that, he names it Hell Mine Oil. After drinking a potion to recover his health, he tests Bottle C. The resulting explosion is minor, but that's exactly the effect Earth was aiming for. He quickly recognizes this as his best formula so far and names it Enhanced Oil, deciding it's perfect for his needs. He begins producing more of it to use against bears in order to level up. Out in the field, he hurls the oil at a trio of bears and takes each one down using a different technique. He restrains one bear with his new whip and kicks it, takes out another with a burst of wind magic, and lands a headshot with an arrow on the final one. He examines his loot and reflects on how the oil has simplified his hunting. Yet, there's a drawback. Depending on it too much could slow his skill growth. Just then, the system notifies him that his hunting bow skill has hit level 50, unlocking Gatling Arrow. Additionally, his wind magic has also reached the same level, granting him the ability to fly. The system notifies him that upon reaching level 50 in both hunting bow and wind magic, he can merge them to unlock a unique skill, Aeolian Dust Hunting Bow. This skill infuses his arrows with wind magic, enhancing their power. However, mastering it comes with a trade-off. He will no longer be able to learn higher tier skills in either hunting bow or wind magic. Even though he's curious about learning more magic skills, Earth chooses to focus on combining bows and wind, as they complement each other well. He then sets out to test his new abilities. Gatling Arrow lets him launch arrows into the air and fire them rapidly one after another. Meanwhile, his flying skill enables him to jump higher and glide for a limited time. He then heads back to the city and asks a craftsman to turn the bear fur into a leather cape. Suddenly, a game-wide announcement pops up. The developers announce that the Fairy PvP event has officially ended and they're about to reveal the 16 players who qualified for the final tournament. At that moment, Sway shows up and tells Earth they probably missed their chance to qualify because they didn't pay attention to the event. The 16 qualifying players are revealed, and Earth notices that both Silver and Glad made the cut. They boast the highest win rates among the competitors. Even after his talk with the old man, Earth finds himself intrigued by their upcoming match. He can't help but look forward to witnessing their battle. Some time later, the tournament kicks off, drawing the crowd to the arena. Earth activates his long-distance vision skill and spots several players sharing the same title as him. As the first matches unfold, he's surprised by how much the competitors have advanced their fairies. Watching their strength, he realizes that if he had qualified, his odds of winning any match would have been 10% at best. However, he notices something odd. The winning fairy absorbs light particles from the one who loses. He's not sure what it means, but he keeps watching every match all the way to the finals. The last battle is between Silver and Glad. Glad, full of confidence, tells Silver to give up, but the old man calmly replies that he needs to correct him. Glad asks how, but Silver calmly responds that he's going to defeat him. As the battle starts, both charge at each other. Glad parries the attack and reveals he's aware of Silver's strategy, using his axe as a distraction before throwing him off balance. Silver pulls back, and Glad immediately launches into an aggressive assault. The fight intensifies, with both combatants unleashing their fairies and abilities against each other. Silver's fairy lands a strike on Glad, briefly paralyzing him. Silver moves in for the kill, but Glad evades with a burst of wind magic. Glad counters, and his fox delivers the decisive attack with a fiery blast. Glad is declared the tournament champion, but then something unexpected occurs. His wolf transforms into a glowing orb before evolving into a fox girl. Overjoyed, Glad commands her to serve him, but she refuses. Confused, he demands an explanation, and she reveals that this transformation was a test to choose the future ruler of the fairies. She says there's a prophecy stating that their leader must be both powerful and skilled in warfare. Glad remains confused, so she clarifies that fairies are not naturally inclined to war. That's why they chose to learn combat from humans. In these battles, the winner inherits the knowledge and experience of the defeated, and the ultimate champion rises as the new ruler. Glad gets irritated because he feels the fairies are using players and then abandoning them. However, the fox girl clarifies that most fairies actually remain with their players. She's only leaving him because their contract has come to an end. Basically, her sole purpose was to help him take revenge on the old man. She tells him they never truly cared about one another, which is why they never formed a real partnership to achieve their goals. He shouts in frustration, but she calmly responds that while he sees this as just a game, for her, it's reality. Earth suddenly realizes the fox girl isn't talking like an AI, she sounds like a real person, but for now, he chooses to brush it aside and move on. The fox girl then offers Glad the chance to form a contract with a fairy just as powerful as she is, but he turns it down, determined to defeat her instead. Since neither of them is willing to back down, they start a duel. The fox girl immediately casts 5 different spells at once, but Glad skillfully evades them and launches a counterattack. But she effortlessly dodges his attack and paralyzes him with an electric shock. She then unleashes more abilities to finish him off. Once the fight is over, the fairy brings the old man back, saying Glad has learned his lesson. After that, she summons all the Fairy Playboy players and thanks them for choosing not to participate in the Fairy PvP event. As a reward, each of them will receive a fairy. However, Earth is an exception. He'll have to battle her instead. Earth is puzzled by this, but she simply reiterates that she wants to fight him. The fairy explains that she can't keep handing out rewards for free since Earth didn't take part in the tournament. Earth agrees, realizing it wouldn't be fair to the other players. That's why she wants to make things fair by challenging Earth to a fight, while disregarding the other Fairy Playboy players. She says that as a reward, Earth will be granted a portion of her powers, even without needing to win the battle. Still, if he does come out victorious, his reward will be even greater. Earth agrees to the deal, but out of nowhere, his Fairy Playboy title vanishes. At that moment, the shady development team appears, commenting that the event has now hit its peak. Earth takes a few minutes to plan his strategy, fully aware that his chances of winning are extremely slim. A single powerful blast from her would be enough to send him straight to his respawn point. Even so, he has one edge: he's already seen her fighting before. On top of that, he's confident she has no experience facing someone who primarily fights with a bow. He knows he has to act quickly since his stamina is low, and dragging out the fight would only lead to his defeat. Still, the only shot he has at winning is by playing dirty. He readies his oils, and both sides get set for the duel. As the countdown hits 0, Earth swiftly spins around and slips away. The fairy girl is momentarily surprised but quickly understands that he created distance because he's an archer. Earth fires his first arrow at 70% strength, but she counters it with wind magic. Though caught off guard at first, he soon realizes that if he fires at full power, his arrows can break through her magic. The fairy girl begins conjuring multiple fire lances, but Earth swiftly dodges them. He fires another arrow, and she attempts to deflect it with her fire magic. Yet, the spell proves ineffective, and the arrow strikes her shoulder. Realizing she needs to act, the fairy girl resolves to shorten the gap between them to stop his attacks. However, Earth was ready and pulls out a bottle. At first, she assumes it's a potion and tries to prevent him from drinking it. Instead, he throws it toward her, releasing a thick cloud of smoke. As the smoke envelops her, the fairy girl realizes that the bottle was filled with poison. Earth hurls a few bottles of enhanced oil at her, triggering multiple explosions. It doesn't take long for her to realize she made a mistake by not banning the use of items. Earth explains that as a human, he has to rely on strategy to stand a chance against a stronger opponent. The fairy conjures up walls of earth to obstruct his line of sight and stop his attacks. However, Earth activates his stealth skill. She attempts to sense his presence, but fails. As the walls begin to fade away, she scans the area, trying to find him. However, Earth suddenly emerges from behind and lashes out with his whip, trapping her. Without hesitation, he follows up with his sliding charge and combines it with his newly acquired bow techniques. He hurls arrows into the sky before rapidly firing them like a machine gun, then finishes by activating his double clone technique to overwhelm her. After being struck by multiple arrows, Earth uses fly and big jump techniques to launch a piercing arrow straight into her core. He then kicks the arrow further inside, causing the fairy to disintegrate. The audience erupts in hype over his display, but Earth immediately regrets his mistake. Showing off his combo moves in front of so many people means they'll never leave him alone, demanding enhanced oil and challenging him to fights. He tries to slip away, but the fairy reappears, blocking his escape. She acknowledges her defeat and tells him it's time to claim his reward. She instructs him to bring out his broken fairy contract crystal and the ring of the Fairy King. Confused, he asks if she means the ring he discovered in the dungeon. When he checks his contract crystal, she notes how unpredictable he is, pointing out that it already contains 5 lights. She then calls upon the Children of Light, and 2 more lights appear within the crystal. After that, she proceeds to reconstruct both the crystal and the ring. She attempts to slip the ring onto his finger, but he instinctively resists, thinking it feels too much like a marriage proposal. She casts a spell to boost her strength and eventually forces the ring onto his finger. The system then reveals that the ring is a unique item, imbued with all 6 elements of fairy power. Wearing it grants access to the fairy's country. However, there's one issue: despite its incredible stats, Earth can't take it off. His attack, defense, and mana recovery all receive a 10% boost, and his mana consumption drops by 5%. Additionally, each attack has a chance to summon an illusion of the Fairy Queen, but the most intriguing reward is a new title, the one who even charmed the Fairy Queen. He immediately senses this title will bring complications down the line. With that, the Fairy Queen vanishes, and the event officially comes to an end. A few days later, Earth discovers that other players who watched the battle are beginning to pick up bow skills. Originally, he was the sole archer in the game, but now it's becoming much more common. Earth keeps concentrating on crafting his oils, though he feels a little down. He had chosen bow and wind abilities because they were seen as weak by everyone else, but now players are recognizing how powerful they truly are. Just then, the Fairy Queen shows up, catching him off guard. He asks how she managed to find him, and she casually explains that the ring also serves as a teleportation point. She taunts him. She says she came to bring love to the poor, lonely guy who still doesn't have a fairy. Earth smacks her on the head, fully aware that she's just trying to avoid her duties, and tells her to go back to work. He decides to head back to the city, but feels uneasy as all eyes are on him. People whisper about him being the Fairy Queen's husband. Out of nowhere, he hears someone yelling for another person to stop, not wanting to get dragged into whatever is going on. Earth keeps walking, focused on his plan to go hunting and try something different. He recalls the Fairy Queen saying that anyone who wears the ring can learn the Prism Nova spell. With that in mind, he chooses to weaken a bear using his arrows before restraining it with his whip. Without wasting time, he begins casting the spell, and after a lengthy incantation, a huge sphere forms above the bear, turning it to stone. He's initially confused, but after some tries he realizes that Prism Nova grants a random abnormal status effect to his opponents. He then manages to find a remote spot and sets up his provisional kitchen. He tries to increase his overall cooking efficiency by making several dishes at the same time. He mentions the spell to the Fairy Queen, who points out that the chances of paralysis and petrification activating are quite low, and the spell also has an extremely long cooldown. When she attempts to take some of his food, he stops her by lightly hitting her head, clarifying that he plans to sell those meals rather than consume them himself. She says that her homeland produces nothing but sweets, and she's grown weary of them. He knows she's working her hardest for her country's citizens, but that doesn't mean that she can come to annoy him when she feels like it. They're suddenly interrupted by a random dude. The guy complains that Earth is ignoring him in the city, making Earth realize this is the annoying guy. The guy introduces himself as Nazar from the Bow of Apollo Guild. He starts acting all high and mighty, claiming their mission is to liberate archers from oppression, even though Earth is the one actually doing that. Earth realizes this guy is an idiot. Then, Nazar says he came to offer Earth a spot in the guild, at the lowest rank. Earth simply replies that he's not interested right now and walks away. Later on, Earth sets up his food stall in the city and tells the Fairy Queen to go away, but she refuses. Eventually, he gives in and hands her some of the food he made. He comments on how much she eats, but she just calls him silly for not realizing why she's spending time with him. Then, without warning, she disappears, saying she'll be back soon. Earth then heads over to Black's workshop to work on his gear. As he gets started, he grows irritated by the crowd forming around him, with everyone staring and standing way too close. Black casually explains it's because because he's famous now, but Earth tells them all to back off and give him some space. Earth then starts working on his gear, first the X-type bow. The bow's durability has decreased, and he now needs to make a new one. He decides to replace both the main body and the strings. He uses excellent wood that he got from the second town to make the main body, and uses light metal for the brace. So, he upgraded the bow, making it way more powerful. The old one had a plus 32 attack boost, but this new version has plus 46. Then, he shifts focus to his bladed shoes. This time, he swaps out the main material for light metal, way lighter, and finally lets him reinforce them properly, making them sturdier and more balanced. He also throws in some twisted arrow spikes on the soles for extra punch, but this round, he skips the side blade. Instead, he adds 3 blades, imitating claws to the toe tip, and 3 twisted arrowheads to the top of the shoe. This way, he will be able to stab monsters when he kicks them. Not only that, but he makes the claws detachable, making it easy to replace. As a result, his fang leg blade gives him an additional 10 defense and 29 attack points. With that done, he only now needs to do one thing. He returns to the crafter girl where he ordered his cloak to be made and notices that she almost had a perfect item grade. However, she doesn't raise the price. Earth is surprised since it's way cheaper than he expected, but she explains that she always charges the same amount, no matter the item's grade. He plans to test it out during a hunt, but just then, he gets a message from Iame, the guild master of the Bow of Apollo. He agrees to meet her and notices a group of archers nearby. Iame promptly introduces herself, and Earth gets straight to the point, asking why she wanted to meet him. She immediately starts apologizing for Nazer's nonsense, saying Earth blew up in fame after his fight with the Fairy Queen. And of course, Nazer saw him as a golden ticket to power up their archer-only guild. But Earth says it's not big deal. Iame points out that Nazer has hit a new level of stupidity. Apparently, he's been trying to attract new guild members by claiming that Earth is part of their group. Both Iame and the rest of the guild apologize to Earth, but he quickly asks them to lift their heads. Iame goes on to say that they disciplined Nazer by stripping him of his rank, demoting him from lieutenant to a regular guild member. While they didn't expel him from the guild, he's lost all his former privileges. Earth feels that's a fair punishment and agrees with the decision. Iame then gets a bit more personal, saying she watched his fight and believes he's an inspiration to all archers. But Earth doesn't share that view. He only chose a weak class to stay away from attention. Back in the developer's room, the team is talking about Earth, the player who overcame the Fairy Queen, secured her friendship, and became a major inspiration for others. Because of this, they make the decision to keep an eye on him. Earth's friend Zwei shows up and reveals a new status effect called Break Arms. If a player gets hit with it, they won't be able to hold a weapon for a while. On top of that, if a player takes damage to their arms that exceeds 25% of their total HP, they'll either be paralyzed or turned to stone. Right after that, a new dungeon is announced, a challenge from the departed. This dungeon has randomly generated floors every time someone enters, packed with traps, and the objective is to reach the 10th floor. Now Earth realizes he needs a shield to take on this dungeon. He knows relying solely on dodging won't cut it, especially in narrow spaces. So, he unveils his new small shield, explaining that he chose it because it works well with a bow. Using the materials he recently collected, Earth gets to work crafting new gear, and reveals he's building a high-tech compound bow. He even brought blueprints from the real world, making this version way more advanced than before. Blax is stunned to find that the bow has an impressive attack power of 38, despite its low bow score of just 3. However, Earth clarifies that the arrows are extremely costly, so he only crafted it to study its mechanics. He doesn't intend to actually use it, as Earth is already working on an even superior design. But since it doesn't actually exist in the real world, he has to design the blueprints himself. Earth stays up all night completing his project, a shield, but not just any ordinary shield. This one has a hidden, compact bow built in. Though small, it's lethal and precise thanks to a tiny scope he added. Releasing the grip transforms it back into a normal shield. It's the perfect weapon for him, incredibly powerful. And even if his arms are disabled by break arms, he can still fight from a distance. Later on, Earth makes his way to the new dungeon and runs into a group that looks like Power Rangers. Their Black Ranger is out sick, and they're urgently looking for someone to fill in. They turn to Earth, knowing he probably won't survive long solo. Earth agrees to team up with their improvised crew. So once they enter the dungeon, the Rangers are all fired up and ready to charge in. But Earth puts the brakes on. He pauses to assess the dungeon and quickly senses that they're about to run into serious trouble. The very first room has 15 traps, some of them capable of killing instantly. Earth takes the lead while the others follow closely. Blue Ranger feels relieved that things are going smoothly, and Red Ranger admits he never doubted Earth. After all, anyone married to the Fairy Queen must be powerful. Once they clear the first area, Earth steps back and lets the Rangers take over. They soon run into danger, but the team handles it well, taking down the skeleton monsters with ease. In a flash, Earth feels relieved he can finally concentrate on spotting traps. When they reach the 3rd floor, the threats escalate, but the Pink Ranger orders the group to stay back and let her handle it. She manages to defeat some monsters on the 3rd floor, though these foes are far stronger than those on the 1st. The axe-wielding fighter is shocked when his strikes prove useless, prompting Earth to clarify that these particular monsters are immune to physical attacks. Earth unleashes his wind-enhanced bow attacks, clearing out enemies with ease. They eventually find the entrance to the 4th floor, but by then, 40 minutes have already gone by. Since they only have an hour to finish the dungeon, the team decides to scale back their objective and aim for just reaching the 5th floor. As they step onto the 4th floor, Earth suddenly gets a strange, chilling sensation, like something bad is about to happen. Suddenly, a scream for help echoes through the dungeon. The Rangers spring into action, and Earth, though hesitant, follows behind. As they enter, a trap slams the door shut behind them, making Earth realize they're trapped until they finish the room's challenge. Surrounded by skeleton monsters, the Rangers are thrilled to engage in combat. Earth quickly checks for traps. Finding none, he unleashes his full power without hesitation. Everyone unleashes distinctive attacks, perhaps a bit too extravagant for Earth's liking, but their strength is undeniable. Soon, the room is cleared. With time running out, the group is sent back outside. The Red Ranger was impressed by Earth, so he is eager to learn his level. Earth doesn't reveal the exact number but confesses he's above 20. In truth, he's beyond level 30, but he chooses not to overwhelm someone he's just met. They divide their modest earnings. Earth adds them as friends, and after that they part ways. Later on, Earth realizes he must disarm traps more quickly if he wants to make it to the 10th floor, so he sets out to craft a tool to boost his thief skills. Blax offers to help and ends up upgrading the lockpicking device beyond Earth's expectations. Motivated by this, Earth pushes himself further, crafting a large supply of arrows in preparation for the next dungeon expedition. Out of nowhere, the Fairy Queen shows up again, looking frustrated. She explains that handing out the crystals was the easy part, but the awkward questions from the players irritated her so much that she ended up fighting them. She even revived them just to defeat them over and over. To cheer herself up, she slyly sneaks a marriage certificate into a list of tasks Earth might consider. Earth is completely confused by her suggestion and immediately rejects signing the certificate. Later on, the Fairy Queen is surprised by how tasty Earth's meat bun is, and he proudly shares that his cooking skill has reached level 50, unlocking the ability to use a steamer. She's thrilled to be the first to try it. Realizing how tough it must be to be a queen, Earth chooses not to reject her this time. However, she quickly gets a little too cozy calling him husband, leaving Earth questioning if he's just made a terrible mistake. Over the past few days, Earth crafted a variety of tools and kept venturing into the new dungeon, aiming to hone his disarming and lock-picking abilities. Despite frequently triggering traps and getting killed, he still managed to reach level 50 in his thief skill, the most difficult decision he'd faced so far, since he now had to choose between evolving it into either a superior thief or a benevolent thief. The superior thief was simply a more advanced version of his existing skills, offering a higher success rate. The benevolent thief, on the other hand, allowed him to steal items from monsters and deal extra damage with surprise attacks, though it required significantly more experience to evolve. In the end, he chose the benevolent path and went back to practicing trap disarming. With continued effort, his success rate improved, and he began testing out the new abilities. Essentially, he just kept passing by the same skeleton over and over again. Because of this, he soon understood the mechanics of the dungeon's creatures. Simply put, monsters are lured by light, prompting him to venture forward in utter darkness. Of course, he depended on his night vision skill to navigate and steer clear of pointless fights. This tactic and ability enabled him to skip numerous encounters through the dungeon at high speed. With just over 5 minutes remaining, he arrived at the staircase leading to the 9th floor. He sprinted onward until he stumbled into a massive chamber. There, he spotted the steps to the final floor, but the room was full of traps. Earth's desperation grew. The exit was right in front of him, yet he had no time to disable the deadly traps blocking his path. With only a few seconds remaining, Earth makes a run for it, so he uses his high jumping skill combined with fly. He glides through the air to dodge the traps. Still, it's not quite enough to reach the stairs. He lands on a trap but quickly rolls away, narrowly dodging the weapons that spring at him. Somehow, he makes it to the stairs and is left puzzled when he isn't kicked out of the dungeon. He checks the timer and sees that it froze with 2 seconds remaining. Still surprised, he decides to focus on healing and drinks a few potions. He can't figure out why he's still inside the dungeon and suspects the system might have classified him as someone who completed the final floor. Regardless of the confusion, Earth tries to brush it off. After all, he's the first player to ever reach the last floor. He descends an endless series of steps when, all of a sudden, a voice calls out to him. Earth demands to know who's speaking. The voice replies that it never anticipated anyone actually making it to the final floor. It then reveals itself as Andre, a knight serving the Empire. Andre explains that since the staircase is incredibly lengthy, he'll take the opportunity to share his tale with Earth as he continues downward. Andre explains that his nation once commanded him to explore this very place. He led an entire army to clear the dungeon, but monsters and traps slaughtered them all. In the end, he was the sole survivor who made it to the final chamber, only to find it completely empty. There wasn't even air left for him to breathe. He goes on to explain that he was eventually turned into a skeleton knight and made to guard the dungeon. Earth, confused, asks if the room still exists, but Andre tells him he destroyed it, wanting to spare others from suffering the same humiliating death trap he did. Earth reflects that even after becoming a monster, Andre still tried to uphold the honor of a noble knight. Then, Andre adds that Earth will find him waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Earth then asks Andre what he wants, and to his surprise, Andre says he wants to die. Earth halts in his tracks, taken aback by the response, but Andre explains that he's already endured more than enough. He refuses to let his heart turn into something monstrous, yet he's nearing his breaking point. He pleads with Earth to release him from this curse and allow him to reunite with his fallen comrades. Suddenly, the stairs begin to vanish, forcing Earth to sprint back in a panic. But he's not quick enough and ends up plummeting into a bottomless pit. A few minutes later, he regains consciousness and hears a strange noise. It's Andre. The skeleton is cackling wildly and muttering to himself. He reveals that Andre has finally surrendered, and now he has full control of the knight's body. Without hesitation, Earth stands up and casually shoots an arrow straight into his skull, prompting the skeleton to grumble in annoyance. Earth tells him to shut up and fires another arrow. This time, the skeleton blocks it with a shield and vows to make Earth suffer before killing him. In the next instant, the skeleton activates a skill and dashes forward, closing the distance in a flash and nearly slicing Earth in two, but Earth narrowly dodges to the side just in time. Amazed by the skeleton's speed, Earth watches as it repeats the same attack, forcing him to raise his shield in defense. The skeleton seems impressed, and Earth taunts him, though he realizes the dire situation. The skeleton is incredibly fast and hits with devastating force. The skeleton praises him for blocking the attack and charges in once more. Earth shifts into a defensive stance, then suddenly jumps back and throws a bottle of enhanced oil. The skeleton is mad, but Earth calmly remarks that he doesn't fight with swords. He fires another arrow, but the skeleton not only deflects it, he follows up with a flying slash that shatters Earth's bow. The skeleton attempts to finish the fight with a burst of speed, but Earth manages to evade the attack. The creature laughs, mocking Earth for being helpless now that his bow is gone. He urges him to surrender, but Earth refuses, declaring he still has a hidden weapon, his right arm. The creature is confused, but Earth transforms his shield into a crossbow and fires. The skeleton dodges, but Earth keeps moving and shooting relentlessly. The skeleton quickly closes the gap and strikes at Earth, who dodges each attack. However, Earth faces an issue with his shield bow. It can only fire special flame arrows and doesn't allow him to use any combat arts. While it lacks raw power, it shoots faster than a heavy bow. Earth keeps up his constant movement and rapid shots, frustrating the skeleton. Enraged, the monster attempts a shield charge, but Earth evades it. However, the skeleton uses his shield chaser skill to change direction. As a result, Earth gets pinned against the wall and is affected by a stun effect. Andre then mentions it's time to send Earth to his gods, but that only makes our boy confused. The Skullhead continues explaining that humans pray to their gods when something happens, so he assumes it's because humans revere gods so deeply. He swings his blade, aiming to cut Earth in half, but the stun wears off just in time, allowing Earth to evade. Suddenly, Earth launches a drop kick straight into the skeleton's face and says, "There are no gods in this world. The only thing that truly exists here, it's humanity's unbreakable will to survive, no matter the cost." The skeleton asks to see Earth's will and raises his sword. Earth promises he will, and runs toward him. He suddenly leaps into the wall and uses his whip to restrain the skeleton's sword, followed by a kick in the face. But that's still not enough. Earth begins casting a powerful spell to end the battle once and for all. However, the incantation takes a long time, giving the monster a chance to power up and attempt to cut Earth in two. Just then, the spell partially activates, binding the skeleton and limiting his movement. As Earth continues the lengthy chant, reaching the midpoint, the creature swings his sword, yet, due to his lack of vision, he only succeeds in smashing Earth's shield. Earth keeps chanting his spell, the process dragging on as if it would last forever, giving the skeleton ample time to ready another strike. The spell finally triggers in time, but the outcome isn't what Earth anticipated. Believing all is lost, he's stunned when the Fairy Queen to suddenly appear at his side. He's stunned for a moment, then recalls that his ring holds a small chance of summoning her phantom. With a smile, she unleashes a blizzard spell and begins to fade away. He then uses this chance to shoot the skull head, thinking he didn't expect her to help him. He launches several bow attacks using all of his skills. He tries to finish it off with an explosion caused by his enhanced oil. The skeleton falls to the floor and Earth sees Andre's soul. The knight smiles warmly and congratulates him on his victory. Andre explains that since Earth defeated the creature before his soul vanished completely, he still has a moment left to express his gratitude. Earth asks if he managed to grant Andre's wish, and Andre responds with a smile. Earth questions what all of this really means, but Andre says he longed for freedom, though he never imagined a solo player would be the one to set him free. Before disappearing, Andre entrusts Earth with his sword, mentioning that despite being worn out, it should be considered an antiquity and worth a lot. He also mentions Earth's words about not existing gods in this world. Andre believes they exist because Earth just stopped him from becoming a complete monster. Andre and his companion fade away, and a sudden urgent announcement echoes across the game. It reports Earth's successful completion of the dungeon and event. The message also teases a new weapon known as the Knight's Sword, though the full details about it will be revealed later. Earth is aware that another weapon might be introduced in future secret boss events. Sometime later, at the blacksmith shop, Earth has a more pressing concern. His shield and whip were destroyed beyond repair. With no way to fix them, he chooses to focus on rebuilding just his small shield, leaving out the whip this time. In a dark room, the developers are busy preparing a report. The woman notes that their AI, PN0E, appears to be having fun. The man responds that her learning progress must be connected to Earth. However, there's a slight issue. Another AI, PN1EB, is grumbling about being bored. The man calmly tells her they just need to wait a little longer. Later, Earth meets Sway's group to conquer the dungeon. Earth thanks them for inviting him. Sway explains they invited him because Nora and Kazamine won't be able to play today. That's why they invited him, because they wanted a thief player who can also deal damage. Earth is confused because they will be only having Millie as a healer. She then explains that they will be fine because they invited a healer to come. He's surprised and asks if that person hasn't appeared. Sway apologizes, mentioning she's a bit late. Earth replies it's okay and he can wait. However, the group quickly points out that the new player can be pretty rude at times. Earth realizes he's supposed to completely ignore her behavior. Sway apologizes, admitting he carelessly recruited a random player without considering her personality. Just then, Eliza, the new member, shows up and mentions that everyone came to welcome her. Sway immediately starts scolding her, demanding an apology for being late. He then tries to introduce her to Earth, assuring him that she's a skilled magician, so there's no need for concern. Earth starts to think Sway must have a tough life if he even has to handle the introductions himself. However, she refuses to apologize and starts mocking Earth for being a weak archer. Earth grins, saying she will be checking his skills inside the dungeon. Inside, Earth begins unlocking the doors by picking the locks. Rona comments that bringing Earth along was the right call, given how many traps there are. Earth notes that while the traps are fairly common, some of them are deadly enough to take them out in one hit, so everyone needs to stay alert. However, Eliza is still complaining. They easily manage to reach the 5th floor and Sway decides to take a break. Eliza is annoyed because she wants to brainlessly rush to reach the 6th floor. She complains they've been inside for 30 minutes already and they must hurry up. The group explains there are several dangerous monsters on that floor, so they must take a safe approach. But Eliza doesn't believe they're that dangerous. Earth mentions that lesser liches inhabit that floor, monsters immune to physical attacks that also inflict debilitating status effects, earning them the nickname trauma generators among players. Eliza grows concerned, but Millie reassures her, saying she can remove freeze and paralysis, while Eliza can handle petrification. Rona adds that her attacks are magic-based, so she'll be fine. design. Sway concludes that the group should be able to handle a lesser lich. Earth joins the confidence group when he suddenly has a notification. He reveals to the group that there are 12 monsters approaching them, 4 of whom are lesser liches. Sway asks if Earth can find any traps inside this room, but Earth replies there aren't. Then Sway tells everyone to prepare because they will be fighting there. Everyone gets hyped out and Millie gives everyone some buffs. Well, except Eliza, who thinks she's having a nightmare right now. Sway tells her to grow a pair and get ready. She follows orders and starts preparing her spell. Earth prepares to strike, but suddenly 4 lesser liches emerge from the walls. He launches his attack with Wide Arrow, splitting it into 3 duplicates. Eliza and Millie join in, unleashing Holy Ray and Explosion, taking down the first lesser lich. However, the remaining 3 press forward. Rage steps up, taunting the creatures to draw their attention, allowing Rona to land a magic punch on one. Seizing the opportunity, Sway delivers the final blow with his magic sword, finishing it off. However, Rage is already suffering from status effects. His arm is petrified, and the liches have started to ignore him. The monsters target the backline, and everyone asks Eliza to use her healing on Rage. Sway explains they will all be wiped out if she doesn't use magic. However, she begins to panic when a lesser lich approaches her. Rona comes in to protect her, and everyone tries their best, except Eliza. Without many options, Earth tells them to get down and he throws his enhanced oils. This creates a major explosion, and Earth tells her to wake up and heal Rage. She gets up and casts her healing magic, giving the group a chance to launch their attack. After the battle, Eliza keeps complaining about Earth, saying he should have used his enhanced oils from the start. Earth tries to explain that he doesn't have enough to use them carelessly. Sway begins to lose his patience and tells Eliza to quit criticizing Earth, especially since she didn't contribute much herself. Finally, Eliza takes responsibility and apologizes. Later, the timer finally runs out and they're teleported outside. Despite having a capable party, they struggled a lot. Sway's group then decides to call it a day and leaves. Earth decides to also go, but there's little girl watching him from the distance. The following morning, Earth notices 2 new weapons have been added to the game, a Japanese bow and a katana. Suddenly, a girl approaches him and asks if he's Earth. He notices her dragon horns and pointed ears, prompting him to ask who she is. She responds that she's the Fairy Queen's younger sister. Though puzzled, he goes ahead and asks why she's come to see him. The girl says there are a few reasons, but the main one is that she wants a taste. Earth looks puzzled, so she clarifies she wants a taste of his lips. As usual, Earth reacts by smacking her on the head, just like he does with her sister. Strangely, she enjoys it and says now she gets why her sister likes him. She even adds that her sister told her he's a great cook. Earth tries to turn her down, saying he has errands to run. The girl replies that she will be following, explaining that she doesn't get chances to go outside. In the end, Earth falls for it and shows the city around. Some time later, they check several stores, to which she finds the merchandise quite amusing. Earth takes the opportunity to ask if his cloak can be fixed, but the crafter girl points out that it's too damaged. Replacing it would be much easier than repairing it. Realizing it's his own fault, Earth changes his request and asks if she can make him some new armor. She wants to know what he has in mind, so he asks what she can craft using pelt and fur from a wild bear. The crafter girl mentions she loves it when people bring her the materials, and so she asks if he has some metal. He gives her some silver and she plans to make him a full set. It will be the wild bear leather set with silver reinforcement, giving him 70 extra defense points. They agree on the price and make the deal. The dragon girl, however, is hungry, so Earth decides to prepare a steak for her and she enjoys it immensely. Eventually, he notices she eats just as much as her sister. This makes Earth wonder if she, too, is a fairy, but the girl refuses to discuss it and won't share her name either. So, Earth names her Ryu, explaining that it means dragon horns in Japanese. Pleased, she tells him he's the only one allowed to call her that. She also mentions she'll drop by occasionally, reminding Earth once again how similar she is to her sister. Suddenly, music plays in the city. It's a game announcement. That evening, Earth goes to Black's shop. They revealed a hidden aspect of the game's design. The announcement talked about skills. They evolve by leveling, which is how they learn arts. However, there are some conditions to learn the most powerful arts. Turns out that people must specialize in a single play style. If someone wants to use the most powerful physical arts, they can only learn physical attack skills. And if they want to learn the strongest magic arts, they can only learn magic skills. However, there's an issue. They use the same approach for crafters. Earth argues that this will cause trouble. Blax questions what Earth plans to do, pointing out they have 1 month to reset their skills. He warns that if Earth doesn't, he could struggle in battle. Earth considers it. By focusing solely on physical attacks, he could grow stronger. However, he'd rather keep the same as he has right now because that's fun for him. Blax is happy to hear it because all of his part-time crafters decided to respec into fighting. Therefore, he will feel less lonely with Earth around. Earth laughs it out, thinking that making people happy with food is also a strength, something he doesn't want to lose. Later, he goes back to the crafter girl and admires his freshly crafted armor set. She explains that she was able to make it so well because of the high-quality materials. Earth is pleased. Not only is his defense boosted, but he also gains extra bonuses to durability and psyche. When she asks what he'll do with his old armor and offers to buy it, he hesitates. Feeling sentimental, he tells her he'd rather destroy it himself. The crafter girl then says that she would love if he took care of this new armor like he did with his older one. Earth smiles and confirms. He thinks the reason for it is because this game allows him to touch the equipment, therefore creating a bond. He even feels a bit sad when it's time to say goodbye. As he starts to walk away, he hears someone call out to him. Turning around, he sees the Fairy Queen, looking unusually serious. She tells him there's something she needs to say. Curious, Earth listens closely, but is caught off guard when she suddenly casts a barrier around them. The Fairy Queen begins by apologizing, then reveals that he'll never be able to form a contract with a fairy. Confused, Earth asks if the fairies dislike him that much. But the Queen explains it's actually the opposite. They love him far too much. Earth is confused, but the Fairy Queen explains she planned to introduce him to a fairy. She was expecting that they would be able to make a contract soon. That's why she bought 6 greater S-rank fairies alongside her, which he would be choosing from. The fairies explain they were expecting to be on a contract with him. However, all the citizens of the Fairy Kingdom found out about that plan, and 80% of the population gathered in the castle gates, asking to make a contract with him. Earth is surprised by that number. The Fairy Queen goes on to say that she can't show favoritism toward her people, and allowing a fairy to form a contract with him would throw her entire nation into turmoil. Earth shrugs it off, saying he gets it. She then asks if he's upset, pointing out that his journey and battles will be tougher without a fairy partner. But he simply responds that's just how life is, and it should still be fun. She chuckles, calling him a weirdo, but insists on giving him a different kind of power as compensation. She asks for his hand, so Earth stretch it. She then gives him 2 powers. Those 2 techniques are recreations of powerful skills created by the fairy ruler. First is 7 falling starts, which increases his damage if he lands 7 bow shots on a target within 30 seconds. The other one is the sacrifice bow, which costs 90% of max health and 100% of max mana to shoot a powerful arrow. However, it will destroy the current equipped bow. She tells him to be careful while using it, and that his stats should return to normal after some proper rest. Yet, Earth's biggest concern is sacrificing his bow. She urges him to keep it hidden and then asks if he's seen the latest news. The Fairy Kingdom will be unlocked in the upcoming update. She invites him to visit, and he agrees. Before heading out, he shares some homemade food with them. Little does he know, this simple gesture plants an idea in the fairies' minds. They start plotting future visits to his place. A few days later, Earth is preparing some meals when Sway asks him if he heard about the new campaign. Earth simply replies it was big news. However, one of Sway's guild members is confused, so Earth explains there are 3 other games that use the VR system. There's a fighting game, a first-person shooter, and a mecha game. However, each of those games requires its own unique VR helmet. To address this, the companies joined forces to develop a universal VR helmet that works across all games. They also planned a major promotional campaign, offering players 15-day free access coupons, which will launch on the same day as the Fairy Kingdom patch. Sway is pretty sure this will increase the game's player base. He tries to steal some steak, but Earth smacks him on the head, telling him that these meats are for customers. So Earth then turns to Nora, giving her the right to smack everyone's heads. Of course, she immediately abuses her power. Sway's guild members mention that guilds will start recruiting more players and ask if they will be doing the same. Nora even mentions it's time for them to become a mid-size guild. However, they must train Eliza first, otherwise, the new players will suffer at her hands. Since Earth had always been helpful, Sway tries to use the opportunity to recruit him. Earth turns him down, saying he's already refused countless times. Internally, Earth admits he just wants to enjoy the game casually. but the real reason is that he's hiding things most players aren't supposed to know. While the queen is common knowledge, her sister remains a secret. Suddenly, Rue shows up and asks if he's working on a new menu. She tries to snatch the food, but Earth smacks her on the head and says he plans to sell it to the customers. Nora, however, is confused and asks who she is. The two ignore the question, and Rue complains about holding back when there's something delicious in front of her. The two start a huge fight because Earth thinks she eats too much. However, the group is confused. They had never seen someone wearing that type of clothes in the game, and they claim that Rue doesn't look like a fairy. Rage asks if Earth won't stop having every girl, despite already having the queen. Zwei uses this chance to complain about how popular Earth is, but Earth beats them up to make them stop saying weird things. Earth complains that his popularity is costing him money since he has to keep feeding Rue. The group, however, dismisses his complaints, noticing how close Earth and Rue seem. Rue then declares that Earth is the only one permitted to call her by that name. The others are stunned, but Zwei tries to threaten Earth, warning that he'll expose the situation on the game forum. Earth replies, saying that if Zwei does, he'll never get to taste his cooking again. Nora then mentions that Earth is not only a fairy playboy, but he also became a dragon keeper. Earth laughs it out, but he worries about what will happen when the fairy kingdom opens. Days later, the fairy kingdom patch is launched, and Earth explains the Fairyland is located south of the second city. He explains the castle is in the center, while also having cities and forts in all 4 directions. But still, the only way to reach it is by walking across the map. Earth trails behind the group people and reaches the northern fortress, struck by the massive walls, though the line to enter is even more overwhelming. As he waits, a stranger approaches and requests to inspect his ring. Earth wonders if the ring might grant him special access. When he presents it, the man recognizes it as the Fairy Queen's ring, verifying Earth's identity and instructing him to come along. Earth is confused, but the man clarifies that the Fairy Queen has commanded his immediate presence, leaving him no choice but to follow. Earth gets even more confused, but the man simply tells his men to bring something. The players waiting in the queue stare at Earth, thinking this is some sort of event. Earth closes his eyes, hoping that the people will stop noticing him. He then opens them back and notices a huge blue beast in front of him. The beast then moves, revealing to be a bird. So the man explains it's a Picasha, a bird that only some selected people can ride. The man casually instructs Earth to board the bird heading to the capital. Earth is stunned, but his disbelief is cut short when nearby players grumble about not being fortunate enough to get the same opportunity. After politely greeting the bird, Earth climbs onto its back and notices how incredibly soft its feathers are. The man explains that this is intentional. The fluffiness acts as a natural safety harness. With that, the bird spreads its wings and soars into the sky, carrying Earth toward the castle. Earth is amazed because the bird can expand the height limit. He also noticed there's no wind resistance, which allows him to fly while feeling the wind. The Picasha keeps flying, passing through towns, and finally arrives at the castle. There, Earth is welcomed by the queen and the other fairies. Suddenly, Earth kneels and greets the queen. However, he's shocked to find out that all this urgency was because she prepared a parade for him. That evening, the Picasha bird takes him across the city, where the citizens of the fairy kingdom gather to welcome him. Although he dislikes being in the spotlight, he realizes there's no point in turning it down. As he returns the greetings, he notices they've even set off fireworks in his honor. So, he chooses to enjoy the moment, at least for a little while. The next morning, in the throne room, Earth says that he's grateful for the reception, but claims she went overboard. The Fairy Queen explains she wanted to show to her citizens that he was in the country. In fact, she reveals that everyone was waiting for his visit because there were rumors that she would keep him to herself. Still, Earth knows it's not just a rumor. She walks up to him, making him uneasy as if she can read his mind and is about to attack. But suddenly, her demeanor shifts. She smiles sweetly and asks if she should keep him for herself. The ministers quickly intervene, telling her to stop fooling around and act seriously. The queen then asks Earth to continue his normal life in her country for a while. She tries to comfort him, mentioning they won't be protecting him or controlling his actions. Earth then gets up, claiming he will continue his normal life as an adventurer starting tomorrow. He decides to head back to the fort town and look for an inn where he can log out. But just then, Earth bumps into the queen in the hallway, and she asks where he's off to. He tells her he's planning to sleep at the inn. The fairy queen then casually suggests he sleep in her room instead. Earth laughs nervously, but not wanting to risk any trouble, he runs and leaps out the window, leaving the queen visibly irritated. As he runs off, he thinks to himself that he probably looks like a thief, but that's fine, since he has the thief skill anyway. He rides the Picasha to the southern forest town and decides to make it his new base, simply because it has the fewest players. He quickly completes a quest to hunt 8 high rabbits and returns to a bar, surprising everyone. Normally, taking down those monsters takes several days. A woman asks if he encountered any thief birds, and Earth confirms he did. Seizing the moment, he then asks if there's a place where he can cook. The woman says he can use her kitchen and Earth promises to pay a usage fee. She's surprised, mentioning it's rare to find someone like him. He quickly hops into the kitchen and explains how this bar works. The first floor is dedicated to posting requests, while the second serves as an inn. Earth chooses to stay there since it's the finest lodging in town. After swiftly preparing his meal, he samples the meat and is pleased. It's flavorful with no odd aftertaste. Inspired, he decides to cook thief bird grilled skewers, a dish that boosts speed. He also experiments with rabbit steak, though it merely satisfies hunger in the virtual sense. As he enjoys his meal, the locals watch enviously, unaccustomed to such exotic fare. Earth promises to make it if they pay for it, but that only attracts more people. In the end, the bar fills up with people who love his cooking. Earth cannot even believe he's cooking like this in the Fairyland. He spent his next days completing requests and cooking for everyone. He would also spend some time drinking with the locals, and it looks like he's having fun there, until someone arrived at the bar, telling Earth to hide. The group is puzzled, but the girl clarifies that the fort leader's daughter is on her way. The barmaid quickly urges Earth to duck under the table. Moments later, the noblewoman arrives, announcing that she's heard of Earth's culinary skills and demands to meet him, offering him a position as her personal chef. Suspicious, Earth assumes she's just trying to take advantage of him. The barmaid politely apologizes, saying the person she's looking for has already gone. Unconvinced, the woman insists that hiding him is pointless. After all, working for her should be considered a privilege. The bar girl lies again, mentioning that Earth went away on an urgent request to another city in the east. The liar's face-off comes to an end, but woman asks her men to gather information. She complains that he left the town without serving food for her. Therefore, she wants to capture Earth. She leaves and everyone is stunned because she is still an idiot. Then when the noblewoman leaves, the bar girl apologizes to Earth because she didn't expect that woman to have her eyes on him. Earth is confused and asks if she knows who he is. The barmaid explains that the queen had told them about him, but also asks them to act like they didn't know to protect him. Earth is caught off guard, but she adds that she could tell he doesn't like being treated differently. She then mentions that the dog woman is a handful, mostly because of her attitude. Basically, she acts superior thanks to her father's status, and her father only makes things worse by spoiling her without realizing it. Earth understands the situation and says that he won't be causing them more trouble. He promises to leave quickly, making the locals unhappy. The bar girl mentions she would love to let him stay there if this situation didn't happen, but Earth says it's fine, and thanks her for everything she has done. He's happy that at least he managed to have some fun with everyone, especially because they all complimented his food and drank with him. Earth waited for nightfall before making his move. Cloaked and cautious, he ran toward the fort gates. When he arrived, he noticed a few guards stationed directly in front of the entrance. Trying to slip past with his face covered, he was suddenly stopped by one of them, who asked if he was Earth. Earth is caught off guard that they already knew who he was, but the guard just says he's aware of Earth's situation and admits they're all fed up with that crazy woman. He promises to gather proof of everything she's done and asks Earth to come back once things settle down. With that, they open the gate and let him slip away. As Earth prepares to flee, someone suddenly calls out that he's running late. Before he can process this, the stranger urges him to climb onto his back for a quicker getaway. To Earth's surprise, his rescuer is a bear. The bear explains that he loved Earth's cooking and wants to repay him by giving him a ride to the southern city. Without hesitation, Earth leaps onto the bear's back, and they dash off together at full speed. Later, the fairy queen receives a report. She's informed that the dog woman from the southern fortress tried to take advantage of a human adventurer. Angered, the queen says this has to be stopped. They've been working hard to build a good relationship with humans. But when one of the fairies mentions that the adventurer was Earth, the queen's expression instantly darkens. In the morning, Earth finally arrives in the southern city with his new bear companion. He apologizes for making the bear sprint all night, but the bear doesn't seem to mind. As they walk through the streets, Earth notices people singing and playing instruments everywhere. Curious, he asks if there's a festival going on. The bear explains that the cities of the fairy kingdom each support a different form of art. The north promotes literature, the east focuses on painting, the west supports sculpture, and the south specializes in music. Earth figures he can enjoy all kinds of music while wandering through the city. but he's too exhausted to explore right now. The bear suggests a nearby inn, and once they arrive, the innkeeper says he's fine with Earth staying there with the wild-haired Zetten. Earth is puzzled by the name, but the bear just mutters that it's an embarrassing nickname. Once in his room, Earth dives into bed, feeling grateful to have the support of a titled fairy. He then logs out to get some rest. The following day, he logs into the game and attempts to get out of bed, but finds himself unable to move. He believes it's a game bug. He soon senses something strange beneath his blanket. Peeking underneath, he discovers the fairy queen there. He pleads with her to release him, but she refuses. He warns her that others might misinterpret their position, but she doesn't care, so she won't allow him to leave. At that moment, the innkeeper opens the door without knocking, witnesses the scene. He quickly backs out, apologizing for the disturbance. Earth pleads for his assistance, and Zetten arrives, asking how he can help. However, upon seeing the situation, Zetten bursts into laughter, teasing Earth for sneaking a girl in on the very first night. Earth struggles to push the fairy queen away, insisting that he didn't bring her there. The fairy queen clings to him, explaining that if she releases him, he'll flee the country. At that moment, both the innkeeper and Zetten recognize her face and are stunned to realize she's their queen. Suddenly, her dragon sister shows up, leaving the other two even more stunned. She demands to know what the fairy queen is doing there, and the queen explains that she came to apologize for the chaos caused by the other crazy girl in the southern city. She adds that the woman, her father, and their private force of 80 soldiers have all been punished. Curious, Earth asks what kind of punishment they received. The fairy queen cheerfully begins to explain what she did to them. She instantly transported them to a deserted field and proceeded to brutally defeat them 30 times, reviving them 29 times. She added that the dog woman had been stripped of her rank and reduced to the lowest level soldier. Zetten and the innkeeper were shocked by the harsh punishment, but Ryu explained that her sister had finally shown her true, terrifying nature and would now start driving people away. Earth, however, brushed it all off, saying that everyone else had treated him well, and he refused to let the dog woman's actions make him hate the entire country. The fairy queen instantly lights up with joy, but Ryu smacks her on the head, telling her to cut it out with her creepy charm. The two sisters begin fighting until Ryu grabs her ear and gradually drags her away. Seizing the moment, Zetten points out that Earth isn't just close to their queen. He also shares a bond with the Dragonian. The innkeeper then asks Earth if he's aware that fairies were once at war with other races. Earth looks puzzled, so he explains that the Dragonians were their fiercest enemies back then. Surprised, Earth listens as Zetten adds that the townspeople would freak out if they knew a dragon was around. They both agree to keep it quiet, and the innkeeper steps away to let the two continue their conversation. Earth was stunned by what had just occurred, but Zetten simply brushed it off, calling him a lucky guy since the queen likes him. Just then, there was a knock at the door. A woman stood there, seeking Zetten's help. She explained that her daughter had disappeared and pleaded with him to find her. Earth urged her to stay calm and ask for more information. The woman took a seat and introduced herself as Karen Fenrir. Zetten noted that the Fenrirs were a noble family. Karen goes on to explain that her daughter follows a strict routine, taking a walk at the same time every day. But this time, she never came back. Despite searching everywhere, Karen couldn't find any trace of her. Zetten points out that their kind can shift between wolf and human forms, making them unlikely targets for ordinary monsters. But that's exactly why Karen fears something far more sinister might have occurred. She reveals a photo of her daughter and offers a reward for finding her. Zetten agrees to take on the request, and Earth says he'll assist him. Karen assures them both that they'll be properly rewarded. Soon after, the two head out into the streets, searching for any leads. Zetten apologizes for getting Earth involved, but Earth brushes it off, saying it's his way of showing gratitude for bringing him to this city. Still, Zetten jokes that a meal from Earth would be thanks enough. Afterward, they venture deep into the forests. As they walk, Earth senses nearby monsters. Suddenly, a few goblins burst out of the bushes, but Earth swiftly takes them down within seconds. Impressed, Zetten compliments him for being dependable in battle, though Earth insists Zetten could easily handle any monster with his raw strength. Checking his map, Earth notices several dots clustered nearby. They decide to check it out, but when Earth activates his long-distance vision skill, spotting Mina surrounded by goblins. Earth shares his plan with Zetten. He'll charge in to smash the goblins while Earth provides support from a distance. Zetten also needs to splash a healing potion on Mina. Without wasting time, they jump into action. Just as the goblins close in on Mina, Earth fires off his archer skills to keep her safe, and Zetten charges in full beast mode. He quickly pours the potion on Mina, healing her instantly, then tells her to hang tight while he takes care of the rest. After defeating the last goblin, Earth walks over to join the others. Zetten credits Earth for making the fight easy, and Mina expresses her gratitude for being rescued. Zetten explains that her mother sent them to find her, and they introduce themselves. The moment Mina hears Zetten's name, she becomes emotional, gushing about how fortunate she is. Earth, amused by Zetten's reputation, cuts in to ask why Mina didn't shift into her wolf form during the attack. Mina admits that while she was walking, a strange, sweet scent overwhelmed her senses, making her feel dizzy. A little later, she regains her senses and realizes she's surrounded by goblins. She tries to transform but fails. Earth hands her a potion and tells her to give it another shot. After drinking it, she suddenly shifts into a giant wolf, though she's puzzled about why it didn't work before. Earth silently notes that it was just an anti-poison potion, meaning she must have been poisoned. He then tells her to switch back to her human form and ride on Zetten's back to head home. Zetten asks what Earth plans to do, but Earth says he's exhausted and wants to rest for a bit. Trusting him, Zetten takes Mina and heads back. Once they're far enough, Earth turns toward the bushes and calls out the hidden figure to show themselves. He explains they were the non-monster signals he spotted on his map and notes how the goblins had unusually high-end gear. Without warning, Earth throws an explosive potion at the bushes, stating he knows that person was behind the goblins' attack and the poisoning of Mina. A man suddenly leaps out from the bushes, demanding to know why Earth is attacking him. Earth responds that kidnapping and murder are the acts of a villain. The man gets up, but Earth notices something important. This is a human, yet not a player. If he lets this man get away, it could strain relations between humans and fairies, possibly even leading to war. As the man draws a knife and lunges at Earth, but our hero teleports behind him and delivers a swift kick to his head. Staggering, the man mutters that he's human while they're just fairies, but Earth remains indifferent. To him, the only thing that matters is whether they can work together or not. The man attempts to attack, but is instantly defeated. Earth reflects that the ideal outcome would be for fairies and humans to understand each other's strengths and limitations and move forward together in peace. However, if conflict is unavoidable, he's prepared to stand with the fairies and show no mercy to humans. As he turns to head back, he's surprised to find Zetten and Mina waiting for him. He asks why they didn't leave, and Zetten explains he stayed behind to see if Earth would manage to catch the culprit. Earth comments that the guy was simply taken care of, and Zetten offers him a ride on his back. A few minutes later, Karen is finally reunited with her daughter and expresses her gratitude, saying she'll reward each of them with 100,000 glow. But Earth has a different reward in mind. Since he follows the Zetten code, he decides to play wingman between Zetten and Mina. Both of them are caught off guard, and Mina becomes flustered, prompting Earth to tease that she clearly has feelings for Zetten. This gives Mina the courage to express her interest in Zetten, who turns out to be shocked and asks for an explanation. Earth mentions Zetten's words that morning, wishing that he could also get a cutie girl. In that moment, Mina quickly holds Zetten, making him lose his brain. Earth then takes them out of his room, and after that he calls for the fairy queen. She quickly appears, asking if he's going to confess to her, just to get another smack on the head. He proceeds to explain the situation, and she responds by saying a conflict between humans and fairies must be avoided at all costs. He agrees, and she thanks him for his efforts in preventing it. The queen promises to look into the matter further, while Earth says he's heading to bed and asks her to leave. However, she suddenly dives into his bed, insisting they'll be sleeping together. Earth refuses, demanding that she get out. The queen then gets out of the bed and asks when she'll see him again. Earth assures her it won't be long, but the queen insists on staying until he promises it. The queen admits she wants to repay him, and Earth questions whether she's speaking as the Fairyland Queen. She nods, explaining that he averted a potential crisis. Earth finally vows to see her again but tells her gratitude isn't necessary. She accepts, though Earth can't help thinking that if she keeps watching his every move, she'll end up no different than Dogwoman. The following day, Earth plans to go back to the main city to stock up on enhanced oils and fix his bow. When Zetten steps out of his room, Earth teases him about how things went with Mina, only to see Mina standing right behind him. Putting the pieces together, Earth grins as Zetten awkwardly explains that he'll be moving in with Mina at the Fenrir mansion. They're heading there now, and Zetten apologizes for not being able to give Earth a ride back. Earth brushes it off and expresses gratitude for the good time they shared. They bump fists before Zetten heads out with his girl. The innkeeper points out that it's quite a long journey back, but Earth has a surprise. Then he calls out the Picasha, leaving the innkeeper stunned. After a few minutes, the bird didn't show up, so the innkeeper remarks that even nobles can't ride those creatures. Earth laughs, claiming it was just a joke, but just then, the Picasha suddenly lands in front of them. They're in total disbelief, so Earth hops on and takes off. After soaring through the sky for a while, he asks the Picasha to drop him off just outside the city to avoid drawing too much attention. Though the Picasha is disappointed, Earth makes it up to him by preparing a meal. The creature happily devours the food and then rolls around joyfully. Out of the blue, the Picasha plucks one of its feathers and hands it to Earth, a legendary accessory that can only be obtained by earning a Picasha's trust. It has the power to remove all fatigue, among other benefits. Earth thanks the bird for the gift and bids it farewell as it flies off. Later that day, he heads back to the blacksmith's shop, explaining he's there to upgrade his equipment. Though supplies are limited, Earth manages to craft another X-style hunting bow using lightweight metal. Though it's a bit heavier, it boasts 55 attack points, far more powerful than his previous one. The following day, just as he's about to test it out, he spots an announcement. He assumes the challenge from the departed is finally over, but then a holographic girl appears, informing him that he's freed the souls who had been in torment. She goes on to deliver more backstory, eventually revealing that the event rewards are limited and only certain players will receive them. To claim them, players must enter a PvP tournament. She asks if he'll take part, but despite the tempting prizes, Earth firmly hits the no button. Suddenly, he hears distant screams and decides to check it out. When he gets there, he finds 4 people lying unconscious on the ground around a freshly hatched dragon egg. Earth gets closer to the dragon, but the people around it mysteriously vanish since they were NPCs for a scripted event. The baby dragon yelps at Earth, who adopts it out of pity. However, it keeps making noise out of hunger, so Earth gives it some beef jerky. After the baby dragon starts eating happily, Earth wonders if he should go back to the town of First with it. Thinking it'll cause a huge commotion, he decides to just stay in the fairy kingdom for now. Then, he leaves to hunt some more food for the baby dragon and test out his new bow. Once he gets some more meat, he starts cooking some stew for himself. However, the baby dragon demands to eat Earth's cooking as well, and cleans out his entire stew pot. After the satisfied dragon goes to sleep, Earth wonders how to handle its insatiable appetite. He calls the fairy queen to check, and she feels shocked by the dragon's presence. Earth explains the situation to her, and she tells him it's a great problem. She explains that wild dragons are different from the draconian race, since the latter learn to control their powers and interact with other races. She reveals that wild dragons stop trying to control their powers, and the red dragons are their strongest breed, belonging to the royal family. Earth realizes that they're in deep trouble if the dragon family finds out their princess was kidnapped. Suddenly, a fairy appears and informs the queen that several red dragons are headed towards their kingdom. When her gaze falls on the baby dragon, she gets mad at the queen for dooming them all. The queen defends herself and explains that she didn't kidnap the baby, but Earth interrupts them to focus on the more important problem where the red dragons are at the moment. Earth and the fairy queen then go to an open field where 2 giant red dragons fly towards them. Once they land, Earth feels startled by their size, realizing it'd be a disaster if they got upset. The father dragon asks Earth in an imposing tone if he kidnapped his child, but Earth explains that he just found that his child had been kidnapped by others. The father refuses to believe him, but Earth insists he isn't lying. Seeing his sincerity, the dragon asks him to come closer and return his baby to prove his courage. The fairy queen feels worried, but Earth tells her he'll be fine. He slowly approaches the father dragon and carefully places his baby on his claw. Seeing that Earth returned his baby safe and sound, the father dragon calms down and apologizes for his anger. He explains that he read the baby's memory and found out that Earth also fed his child. The dragon thanks Earth for his help and offers to grant him a wish in compensation. Earth accepts and requests the dragons not to blame the fairy kingdom for this accident. He also asks them to forget they ever met, which confuses the mother dragon. Earth explains that he doesn't want to draw any attention to himself, and the dragons agree to his demand. After finishing their discussion, both dragons leave, and Earth finally heaves a sigh of relief. The fairy queen thanks Earth and offers to take him to her castle to repay him fully. After he tells her that he has some work to do in town, the queen calls a Picasha over and reassures Earth that nobody will find out that he was involved in this matter. Thanking her for the help, Earth gets on the Picasha and heads to East Fortress. Earth visits the Adventurers Guild in the east, but finds out that there aren't any jobs. An old lady asks him if he needs help, so Earth asks her why there aren't any jobs. She explains that there used to be lots of adventurers' jobs, but the humans took them all. She also offers to let him work at her inn and stay the night, since their whole kingdom is short on quests. Earth accepts her offer and becomes a waiter, struggling to juggle multiple orders at once. He runs back and forth, listens to impatient customers, and washes the dishes all by himself the entire night. When he's forced to cook as well, Earth feels confused by all his duties, realizing he got totally scammed. Once his shift is finally over, Earth slumps over a desk in relief. The old lady thanks him for all his help and gives him the money. As Earth walks to his room with the money, he feels amazed by all the insane stuff that happened to him this day. Entering his room, he feels like he had lots of fun and thinks about opening his own restaurant. Earth feels impressed by all the features the devs put into their game before heading to bed. Meanwhile, the shady devs agree to continue running one more. One of them asks the lead old man about two certain people, and the old man tells him that E has learnt how to laugh after interacting with a certain player. When he reveals that Eb now knows how to feel anger, the other devs feel shocked. A female dev remarks that E used to be completely emotionless, and Eb was a spoiled child. As she sighs over how much the eyes have changed, one man expresses his surprise that a player like Earth exists. The female dev thinks Earth is interesting, and reveals that she is also a player. Another dev feels like it's worth running one more, while the old man says that it's a great project for training their eyes. Back in the game, Earth gets the announcement for the PvP tournament winner. Learning that Silver actually won, Earth feels glad that Glad finally got a taste of defeat. Closing the UI window, he sighs as he enjoys the relaxing breeze in-game. Earth feels like this is the kind of stress relief he signed up for and wonders how he got involved in all the crazy stuff so far. He then thinks that running around doing quests is also fun, reminding him of his childhood playtime, knowing he stopped exercising as an adult. Earth feels regretful that he got out of shape and damaged his health. He realizes that because he started having so much fun with all the quests in-game, he forgot his own desire to relax and got involved in all sorts of trouble. A tear appears in his eye from his troubled emotions, and Earth starts walking to find some company. Remembering all the crazy friends he can always count on, Earth thinks that it's time he started treating them better and cherished them. Sometime later, the Fairy Queen calls Earth to her palace in the east. When asked the reason for calling him, the Queen tells him she thought he'd be lonely without her. Earth gets upset at her bogus reason and smacks her head, while a green-haired man watches them awkwardly. Finally noticing the other man, Earth asks him who he is, and he introduces himself as a wild green dragon. Earth feels surprised since wild dragons avoid other races, but the man explains that although green dragons are weaker than others, they are faster and can take human form. Thus, they're able to interact and help the wild dragons form relations with other races. Earth nods, but still feels confused by why the man is there. The dragon thinks he should know, and Earth thinks that it's related to the baby dragon he saved. The dragon nods and reveals that the dragon princess has a huge problem. She stopped eating after returning home. While both Earth and the Fairy Queen gape in shock, the dragon reminds them that their princess needs to eat to grow up healthy. However, the baby dragon eats only half the amount that's normal for her age and started asking everyone to turn her into a human. Earth feels surprised, saying he doesn't know why the dragon is acting this way. He tells the dragon that she ate a lot of food when she was with him, so nothing should be wrong. The dragon feels lost, but then the Fairy Queen points out that Earth's cooking probably tasted too good for the baby. When she asks Earth what he fed the baby, he gets shaky and reveals he fed her a gourmet steak. As the green dragon asks him about the dish, Earth cooks some for him. The dragon immediately starts devouring the steak and totally understands why his princess loves human food so much. Nodding her head in agreement, the Fairy Queen also eats with him, while the dragon asks for another portion. Watching them both eat so carelessly, Earth gets angry and reminds the dragon that he's here for a diplomatic visit. Bowing his head in apology, the dragon asks Earth if he can send some more food for his princess. When Earth tells him he's out of ingredients, the dragon flies out to get more. After some time, Earth gives the dragon the finished food, and he runs off with it. Earth asks the Fairy Queen why the wild dragons are interacting with the fairies, and she tells him it's probably because of him. He feels dizzy at this news and starts going back to his room, but the Fairy Queen stops him. She tells him she'll prepare the best room for him at her castle. Earth escapes through the window, wondering if he opened another can of worms with the wild dragon. dragons. Meanwhile, in the dragon palace, the big dragons quietly watch as their little princess devours all of the human food. Her father asks the green dragon about the food, and he explains that Earth enhanced its taste through cooking. Watching his daughter, the dragon lord feels surprised by Earth's incredible talent, and the green dragon decides on something. He tries cooking some of his own steak, but fails miserably at getting it to taste good, as he wonders about getting permission to visit Earth. Another green dragon silently watches him outside the window. The green dragon then flies away somewhere and turns into its human form. Back at Eastern Inn, Earth wakes up with the fairy queen snuggled up to him. He punishes her with a suplex, and the queen wakes up with a huge lump on her head. Earth prepares to leave the room, but she tries to stop him, so he leaves after tying her up. Out in the street, the guards make way for Earth as he walks through. Still not used to getting treated so respectfully, Earth thinks about leveling up his kick and whip skills. The green dragon called Emmer interrupts his thoughts and asks if he's really Earth. Earth denies that he's the guy Emmer is looking for, but the old man presses further that it's him, not wanting to get involved with another wild dragon. Earth firmly refuses and points out that plenty of people look like him. After telling the old man he's mistaken, Earth walks away, knowing the baby dragon is causing him all this trouble. He doesn't feel like becoming the dragon's personal chef, wanting to play as an adventurer. However, the fairy queen blows his cover by popping up with the elder. As the dragon elder tries to grab Earth, he refuses to get caught and uses a high jump skill to run away from them. Both dragon and fairy chase after Earth, but he spots an inn and decides to go inside and hide. Earth quickly barges into the inn and demands that the owner give him a room. Before storming inside and leaving the fairy queen and dragon out, Earth collapses on the bed, thinking that it's time he left the troublesome fairy kingdom. The next morning, Earth goes down to leave the inn, but the frightened owner tells him that the queen issued an arrest warrant for him. Earth looks around him and finds warrants plastered around the entire city because he broke the queen's heart. He gets enraged that the queen broke his trust and exposed him in front of the whole country, and storms inside her castle where she's waiting with the old dragon. Earth tells the queen she crossed a line this time, but she claims she can explain. However, he refuses to listen to her and tells her to remove the fairy ring she put on his finger. Then, Earth tells the old dragon that he won't cook anything for the dragons. When the old man refuses to listen, Earth tells him he's tired of the dragons making demands of him, even after he saved their daughter. The old man thinks he can force Earth to obey him, but Earth tells him that he's ready to fight, angered to the max. The old dragon tells Earth to take their fight outside. Once out, he transforms into his dragon form, and Earth remembers the dragon's promise to hide his identity. Earth thinks that dragons assumed it's their right to make him obey, so he needs to fight for his own rights. The old dragon allows Earth to make the first move, so he uses an arrow twister attack. However, the arrow bounces harmlessly off the dragon's skin, and it swipes its powerful claw at Earth. Earth dodges the attack, but the dragon flies up and knocks him down. Earth thinks about using an herb against the dragon, but decides it's too risky since the wind could blow it back at him. He takes aim with 2 arrows and unleashes a twin-fanged arrow at the old dragon. Despite the increased power, the dragon shrugs off the attack and lunges to attack Earth again. Earth manages to block it with his shield, but the knockback still hurts him. The dragon feels surprised that Earth survived, but his shield suddenly breaks apart. He mocks Earth's shield for sacrificing his life, and Earth decides to avenge his old partner. In front of the surprised dragon, he gets up and pours a potion over himself, determined to fight until the very end. The dragon gets serious and charges a fire attack, but Earth uses a wind booster to rush at its mouth. He throws the Hell Mine oil bottles in the dragon's face, which leaves him with just a sliver of HP. The dragon roars while writhing in pain, and Earth readies his bow. He uses the 7 falling stars on the dragon, who feels shocked that he has the fairy's ultimate technique. After the arrows explode, Earth thinks he won, but the smoke clears to reveal an enraged dragon. Earth realizes it's only normal that a dragon survived, but then it blows him away with a wind blast that uproots the landscape around them. As the dust clears, the dragon feels proud that he vaporized Earth. Meanwhile, Earth hides behind a rock, having used his wind booster and sneak skill to avoid the attack. Thinking he has no other option, he decides to bet everything on the sacrifice bow skill. While the dragon lowers to the ground, a powerful aura erupts from Earth's bow as he loads up its final arrow. He combines his love for the bow and will to survive into one last shot, aniplot and takes aim at the shocked dragon. The dragon reminds Earth that he won't survive if he uses this attack, but Earth is prepared for that outcome. He unleashes the final arrow, and the dragon uses a barrier to stop it. Earth refuses to give up and pours his heart and soul into the arrow, which shatters the barrier and pierces through the dragon's body. With its final swan song, the X-bow disappears from Earth's hands, and he thanks it for its help. Much to his shock, the dragon is still alive, so he rushes at it with a kamikaze attack of exploding oils. Watching this battle, the game devs feel surprised that the old dragon is losing. One of them considers nerfing the oil, but another dev tells him that the players will leave if they limit their freedom too much. Meanwhile, other devs feel surprised that Earth sacrificed himself and his bow. They respect him for making the call, despite feeling the fear in real life. Back in the game, Earth's soul watches the defeated dragon and his own dead body, thinking he'll get respawned at his last login point. However, the other red dragons appear, and Earth thinks they'll save the green dragon. To his shock, they revive him instead, and the game asks if he accepts the revival. Earth accepts the revival and asks the dragons why they didn't help their friend. The red dragon king explains that the green dragon elder had grown arrogant and started bullying others. He reveals that the green dragon had threatened the fairy queen to put out his arrest warrant if she didn't want the dragon to attack the towns. While Earth realizes the queen was innocent, the dragons explain that they wanted to punish the green dragon, but Earth defeated him before they arrived. Earth asks the king if he's okay with this, and the king responds that he would have taken care of the green dragon himself. Then, he gives Earth over 800,000 glow, a dragon scale armor set, and a mysterious bow as a reward for his cooking. Earth puts on the light dragon armor before asking about the mysterious bow. He wonders why he can't see its stats, and the king explains that a fairy who once fought him used this bow. He tells Earth that the bow only recognizes its users if they satisfy its requirements. Earth puts away the weapon, and the Dragon King leaves after telling him he needs Earth's trust for his daughter's sake. Finally, Earth collapses in exhaustion and calls over the Picasha for a ride. It comes running to him and flies away with him. Earth feels like he's abusing his Picasha privileges, thinking back to the Queen's grand welcome. Once he returns to the inn, he buys a fairy cloak to cover his dragon armor before visiting the Queen in her castle. Inside the throne room, Earth remembers what her servants told him about their queen. She had been incredibly depressed after he got angry and could snap at any moment. With her fragile condition in mind, Earth feels guilty for hurting her and calls her name. The queen happily perks up, but apologizes to him again. Earth explains that he learnt the real story and thinks she made the right call to protect her people. He apologizes for lashing out like a child and not listening to her. However, the queen still thinks she hasn't been treating him right and offers to grant him a wish. Earth tells her to seal his ring's power, and she thinks he hates her now. However, Earth just thinks that it doesn't deserve to be treated with so much privilege. The queen understands that he's right and apologizes again for all the extra attention she gave him. Earth thanks her, saying that the celebration and Picasha rides felt great. Then, as she reaches out to take his hand, he tells her that he was only able to defeat the green dragon because of the ultimate skill she gave him. The queen finally dispels the ring's powers and asks if she can see Earth again. He tells her that he'll return someday, before turning around to leave the castle. Earth decides it's time to go back to the town of First, but leaves to say goodbye to Zeton first. As he starts walking back home, this is where our story ends. This was the end. Subscribe to not miss more recaps and watch the next video on screen.